Have you ever felt like you were watching life happen from the outside, as if you were an observer in a play where everyone else follows a script you can no longer accept? That feeling that the rules governing the society around you seem increasingly absurd, as if you'd awakened from a collective dream and could now see reality with a disturbing clarity? If you've experienced this, you may have started questioning not just social norms, but the entire invisible architecture that shapes our behavior, desires, and even our most intimate dreams. Perhaps you are among the rare individuals who have begun to perceive the invisible strings that move the human puppet, and more importantly, maybe you've begun to cut some of those strings. The truth is, most of humanity lives within systems of control so sophisticated that their existence often goes unnoticed. We are like fish that can't see the water they swim in, accepting as natural the structures that were deliberately built to keep us in specific states of behavior and awareness. These systems are not necessarily malicious in origin. Many emerged as practical solutions to real problems of human social organization, but over millennia, they have evolved into golden cages that drastically limit our potential for genuine growth and autonomy. What makes these systems particularly effective is that they don't operate through brute force or obvious coercion, but through the subtle manipulation of our deepest instincts, primal fears, and desires for belonging and safety. Over the last 10,000 years, since our species developed agriculture and began forming the first complex civilizations, we've been gradually domesticated by social structures that promised security in exchange for freedom, predictability in exchange for authenticity, and belonging in exchange for individuality. This domestication was not a conscious or planned process, but a cultural evolution that favored societies best able to keep their members obedient, productive, and predictable. Over the centuries, we developed religious institutions that taught us to seek approval from divine authorities, educational systems that trained us to follow instructions without question, economic structures that made us dependent on jobs and salaries to survive, and social networks that conditioned us to constantly seek external validation. Each of these institutions, on their own, might seem beneficial or even necessary, but together they form a set of invisible chains that keep most of humanity in a state of perpetual dependence. The first sign that someone has begun to outsmart this system is a fundamental shift in their relationship with work and money. Most people accept as natural the idea that they must trade most of their waking hours for money, working in jobs they often find meaningless or even harmful, simply because they have bills to pay and a lifestyle to maintain that society told them was necessary. They organize their entire lives around schedules imposed by others, sacrifice time with family and friends to meet deadlines set by bosses, and indefinitely postpone their dreams and passions in the name of practicality and responsibility. Those who've broken free see this as one of the most sophisticated traps ever created by civilization. They begin to question not just what kind of work they do, but the very premise that time must be exchanged for money. They develop multiple sources of income, seek ways to automate or optimize their earnings, and most importantly, begin to value time and freedom above status and consumption. This isn't laziness or irresponsibility, it's a deep understanding that time is the scarcest resource we have, and trading it for money without question is one of the most subtle forms of modern slavery. The second sign appears in how these individuals handle opinions and social validation. Most human beings are deeply dependent on others' approval, shaping their opinions, lifestyle, and even personality according to what they believe will be accepted and admired by their social group. They avoid expressing controversial thoughts, follow trends without question, and feel genuine anxiety when they realize their views differ from the mainstream consensus. This need for approval is systematically exploited by advertisers, politicians, and influencers who know exactly how to manipulate our ancestral fear of rejection and social exclusion. Those who've broken free develop an emotional independence that allows them to form opinions based on their own analysis and experience, even when those views are unpopular or misunderstood. They don't constantly seek external validation for their choices and feel no need to justify their way of life to people who don't understand their circumstances or values. This independence doesn't make them arrogant or insensitive, but rather more authentic and less manipulable. They've learned that approval is an infinite resource that can never truly be earned because someone will always disagree or judge, and seeking it is a never-ending race that only distracts from the real work of self-knowledge and personal growth. The third sign reveals itself in their relationship with consumption and material status. Modern society was built on the premise that happiness and success can be measured by accumulating objects, experiences, and status symbols. From birth, we're bombarded with messages telling us we need specific products to be happy, attractive, safe, or respected. This programming runs so deep that many people organize their entire financial life around acquiring things they don't actually need, racking up debt and working jobs they hate just to afford expensive cars, branded clothes, the latest gadgets, or homes larger than necessary. Those who've broken free recognize this as a carefully constructed trap that keeps people stuck in cycles of work and consumption that mostly benefit corporations and financial institutions. They develop a much more conscious relationship with money and possessions, buying only what truly enhances their quality of life or aligns with their core values. This doesn't mean living in poverty or denying all material pleasures, but rather distinguishing between real needs and desires artificially created by advertising and social pressure. This mindset shift often frees them from surprising amounts of financial stress and allows them to focus their energy and resources on experiences and relationships that truly matter. The fourth sign appears in how they process information and form beliefs. Most people consume information passively, accepting as truth whatever is repeated often enough by the media outlets they've chosen to follow. They tend to seek out sources that confirm their pre-existing beliefs and avoid information that might challenge their worldview, creating echo chambers that reinforce their biases and cognitive limitations. This intellectual passivity is deliberately cultivated by educational systems that reward memorization and obedience over critical thinking, and by a media industry that simplifies and polarizes complex issues to keep audiences engaged. Those who've broken free have developed a healthy skepticism toward all sources of information, even those that confirm their own views. They actively seek out divergent perspectives, question the motives behind the information they receive, and maintain a genuine curiosity about topics they don't fully understand. They haven't become cynical or paranoid, but intellectually independent, capable of holding the tension of not knowing and changing their mind when presented with compelling evidence. This intellectual independence protects them from political and commercial manipulation and helps them navigate an increasingly complex world with greater discernment and wisdom. The fifth sign is reflected in the quality and nature of their personal relationships. Modern society promotes forms of relationships that are often shallow, competitive, and based more on transactional exchanges than genuine connection and mutual support. We're encouraged to maintain large but superficial social networks, to compete with friends and family for status and resources, and to seek romantic relationships based on surface-level criteria like physical appearance, social standing, or lifestyle compatibility. Many people end up surrounded by hundreds of acquaintances but feel deeply lonely, or they remain in emotionally draining relationships because they fear loneliness or social judgment. Those who've broken free prioritize quality over quantity in all their relationships, preferring a few true friends over many shallow ones. They've learned to set healthy boundaries, to say no to social commitments that don't enrich their lives, and to seek out people who support their personal growth, even if that means challenging social norms. Their romantic relationships tend to be based on shared values and life vision more than physical attraction or social convenience. This change often leads to smaller but far more fulfilling social circles and to a sense of authentic belonging that doesn't depend on conformity or performance. The sixth and perhaps deepest sign is a fundamental shift in their relationship with time and mortality itself. Most people live as if they were immortal, endlessly postponing the things that truly matter while getting lost in artificial urgencies and endless distractions. They spend years or decades in jobs they hate, stay in relationships that don't nourish them, put off trips or experiences they dream of, and rarely reflect on the fact that life is finite, that each passing day is a day that will never return. This denial of life's impermanence is encouraged by a culture that promotes eternal youth, future material success, and constant gratification through consumption and entertainment. Those who've broken free have developed a sharp awareness of life's brevity, which motivates them to make more deliberate and meaningful choices. They don't live in fear of death, but with deep respect for the limited time they have, leading them to prioritize experiences, relationships, and activities that truly matter to them. This awareness doesn't make them morbid or anxious, but more present, more grateful, and more focused on what truly counts. They tend to make decisions based on how they'll feel about them on their deathbed, which naturally leads to a more authentic life aligned with their deepest values. Let me ask you, as we explore these ideas together, how many of these signs do you recognize in your own journey? Perhaps you've started to question some of these invisible structures we've mentioned, or maybe you still feel fully immersed in the systems we've described. Whatever your current situation may be, know that recognizing these patterns is the first step toward greater autonomy and authenticity. If any of these signs resonated with your experience, share your reflection in the comments by completing the sentence. I started to outsmart the system when I realized that I was. Your honesty may inspire others going through the same awakening process, reminding them that we are not alone on this path toward greater awareness and personal freedom. It is important to understand that overcoming these systems does not mean completely rejecting society or living as a hermit isolated from the world. Many of the structures we question arose for valid reasons and continue to serve important functions for the functioning of human civilization. The goal is not to destroy these structures, but rather to develop the ability to consciously choose when and how we engage with them, instead of being automatically controlled by them. It is about developing what we might call personal sovereignty, the ability to live according to our own values and priorities, even when they diverge from prevailing social expectations. This sovereignty is not selfishness or irresponsibility, but rather a mature way of participating in society from a place of authenticity and conscious choice. Modern technology, particularly the internet and social media, has created both new opportunities to escape these traditional systems and new methods of control and manipulation that are even more sophisticated. On one hand, it has never been easier to work independently, learn new skills, connect with like-minded people around the world, or access information that was once available only to privileged elites. On the other hand, the same technologies are used to create algorithms that manipulate our attention, platforms that addict us to superficial social validation, and surveillance systems that monitor and influence our behavior in ways we are only beginning to understand. The challenge for anyone seeking greater autonomy is to learn to use these tools consciously and deliberately, extracting their benefits without becoming enslaved by their more manipulative and addictive aspects. When we look at human history from a broad perspective, we can see that there have always been individuals who managed to transcend the control systems of their time and live according to higher principles of freedom, creativity, and authenticity. These were the philosophers, artists, inventors, and spiritual leaders who expanded the boundaries of what was possible for our species and opened path to more evolved forms of human existence. They were not necessarily people with special resources or unique privileges, but rather individuals who developed the courage and wisdom to question the fundamental premises of their time and live according to their own discoveries about what truly matters in life. In our time, when social control systems have become more sophisticated and pervasive than ever before in human history, it may be more important than ever to cultivate this capacity for independence and discernment. The journey to overcome these systems is neither easy nor quick, and often involves periods of isolation, misunderstanding, and even ridicule from those who remain fully immersed in conventional structures. It may mean earning less money, having less social prestige, or facing pressure from family and friends who do not understand the choices you are making. But for those who persist on this path, the rewards are extraordinary. A sense of authenticity and alignment that simply cannot be bought or achieved through conventional means, deeper and more meaningful relationships. A creativity and energy that arises when we stop spending our life force on activities that do not nourish us, and most importantly, an inner peace that comes from knowing we are living according to our deepest values, regardless of what others may think or say. The world is undergoing accelerated transformations that make increasingly clear the unsustainability of many of the systems that have governed our civilization over the past decades. Climate change, growing inequality, political instability, and the emergence of disruptive technologies such as artificial intelligence are forcing humanity to rethink fundamental assumptions about how we organize our society, our economy, and our personal lives. In this context of change and uncertainty, those who have already developed greater independence and flexibility in relation to conventional systems are better prepared to navigate the transformations ahead and perhaps contribute to the creation of wiser and more sustainable forms of social organization. If these reflections have touched on something you've been feeling, but perhaps haven't found the words to express, know that you are not alone. By subscribing to the channel, you'll connect with a growing community of people who share your concerns and your desire for a deeper understanding of the philosophical challenges of our time. Each week, we gather here to explore together the big questions that define our era and to seek not only understanding, but also wiser ways of living amid the transformations we are witnessing. This is not just a channel, but a space for dialogue and collective growth where we can honestly examine the systems that govern us and discover paths toward greater freedom and authenticity. Join us on this ongoing journey of questioning and discovery, because the questions we explore here are not merely philosophical abstractions, but practical tools for creating a fuller and more meaningful life in a world that often leaves us disoriented and fragmented. The truth is that each person who manages to at least partially overcome these systems of control not only transforms their own life, but also serves as an example and inspiration for others who may be starting to question conventional structures. In a world where conformity is often rewarded and authenticity punished, those who choose to live according to their own principles become beacons of possibility, demonstrating that there is an alternative to the life of quiet desperation that Thoreau observed as the fate of most men. It is not about becoming a rebel for rebellion's sake, but about developing the maturity and courage necessary to live a life that is truly your own, a life you can look back on with pride and satisfaction, knowing you made your own choices and followed your own path regardless of external pressures and expectations. This is perhaps the greatest adventure available to any human being. The journey of self-discovery and self-liberation that allows us to transcend the limitations imposed by the systems we were born into and create an existence that reflects our highest values and most authentic potential. It is not a journey that ends, but rather a continuous process of growth, questioning, and refinement that makes each day more interesting and meaningful than would be possible within the conventional parameters of success and happiness that our culture offers us. The most important taboo of the global liberal order was that strong countries cannot just invade and conquer other countries by force of arms just because they are stronger. It has been, I would say, the most amazing political and maybe moral achievement of humankind. And the place to see that it was a reality is in government budgets. You know, people talk about peace and war, and they think about, you know, all these pacifist literature or poetry. Don't read poetry, read government budgets. And government budgets over the last 20 or 30 years have been the most amazing thing to read. More than 80% of the budget of the Roman Empire was spent on soldiers, warships, fortresses, weapons. And this was the situation until the 20th century. In the early 20th century, more than 50% is spent on the military. In the early 21st century, all over the world, taking all countries, the average expenditure went down to between 6 and 7%, compared to 10% average spent on healthcare. It was the first time in human history that governments spent more money on healthcare than on the military. And it was all based on this basic taboo that, okay, there are civil wars, there are revolts, revolutions, we didn't solve all problems. But one thing is off the table. You cannot invade and conquer another country just because you're stronger. And this taboo has now been broken.
Would you regard yourself as an optimist or a pessimist with how much history you consume and with how you look at the development of the world?
I thought you'd be a realist. I'll tell you the main question.
Yeah,
the really kind of most fundamental question. When you talk to the people who lead the AI revolution about the potential dangers, they agree. There are threats. It's just a matter of pace. Just slow down. Everybody tells you the same thing. We would like to slow down, but we can't because we cannot trust our competitors. But then you ask them, but when you develop the AI, are you sure you will be able to trust the AI? And then they tell you yes. So it's this paradox that we cannot trust the humans, but we think we can trust the machines more than we trust the humans. They realize how kind of alarming and even ridiculous is what they are saying. That we cannot solve trust between humans, but we think we can solve trust with the aliens. But the key thing is they tell you, you know, it's like you are trapped in a room and one door, you open it for thousands of years and there is a monster behind the door. This is the inability to trust humans. And there is another door, and there is a very high chance there is an even worse monster behind that door, but we never opened it. So we are not sure. So we are gambling the future of humanity on the chance, the small chance, that behind door number 2 is not a monster. We are going to see AI changing even things like religion. Religions which are based on texts, like Judaism, Islam, and Christianity, they give ultimate authority to the text, not to any human being. Now, until today, humans were nevertheless the main authority in these religions because the texts could not speak. The Bible could not interpret itself. The Bible could not answer your questions, so you needed a human being as an intermediary. What happens when you have an AI text that can speak for itself? No Jewish rabbi can know all the texts of Judaism because there are too many of them. For the first time in history, there is something on the planet that is able to remember every single word in every writing of every rabbi in the last 2,000 years and talk back to you and explain and defend its views.